Yeah, okay. So we have here Vlatka Tor and Željka Somun also with us in the society. So I'm also inviting you to join our conversation if you feel like it. So I will say a few words about Mirror project, just briefly. Sandor has been applying for European projects and doing literary translations with the support of the EU for years. But 4 years ago, we decided we will use the opportunity to enter a new program, which is called a circulation of European literary works. And we invited Goga Publishing from Novo Mesto, Slovenia, and Bottega Errante from Udine in Italy. Both publishers have similar publishing program in literature, publishing ex-Yugoslav authors in translation when we speak about Slovenian publishing and Italian publishing, while we in Croatia, we publish Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, and Montenegrin literature without translation. But we have similar program like Goga and Bottega Errante, and we applied, and we said, let's try with this application, let's try to sort of mirror the books in different languages, and that's why we call the project Mirror. And we really managed to do that. So we translated 6 authors, altogether 5 titles, and we produced 11 books. And there was 11 translators involved in the project. And this I haven't come across a similar project on a European level that has lasted for just 3 years and had so many variations of same titles in different languages. So the title that Rawley and Anita translated, Sebastian Pregel's book In Elvis's Room, was translated to 3 languages, and if we take the original Slovenian work, then it's 4 languages that were in the picture during the project: Slovenian original, Croatian translation, Italian translation, and English translation. And the English translation was longlisted for Dublin Literary Award, which was the biggest achievement, I would say, of the project in terms of the reception of the literary experts. But
I can show the books. This is the Slovenian. Yes. And the English.
This is the English, yes.
I don't have the Italian or the Croatian versions, but
yeah, we don't have it here with us because it would be a lot of books that we would bring here. But yes, the Slovenian original came out not so long time ago. So already there are 3 translations out just a few years after the original came out, and everywhere the book was really nicely received. So I think there's another topic, the subjects of post-Yugoslav or ex-Yugoslav books. That we can also talk about. But I will now move on to what could be like a let's say, a common denominator to all of these books. That's obviously geography or a cultural territory, and that's the Balkans. Besides ex-Yugoslavia, we included one Balkan classic, that's The Case of Jam by Bulgarian 20th century writer Vera Mutavčieva, which was also translated to 2 languages, to Slovenian and into English. Angela Rodel translated The Case of Jam into English, and this was, by the moment the book, I mean, by, let's say, last year, it was the best-selling book in Sandorf Passage. That's the English language publishing house that we co-published a few years ago in the US. And that book really made it great, and it had really came to a lot of readers in the US, which is amazing. And honestly, it went better than we thought. Of course, it had a great push by Angela's success, together with Georgi Gospodinov, who they both received International Booker Prize for the translation of Gospodinov's work, Time Shelter. And yes, that's really for an applause. Rawley, you're absolutely right.
So, thank you. It's a great book, though. It was Van's idea, so it was a great book to translate.
Angela, it was really like a fortunate coincidence that we talked about this project, let's say 2 years before you and Georgi received the award. And then we slowly started engaging the project. And then exactly the book came out just at the time, about the time of the award. So it was great timing. That was not planned, but when you do cultural projects, you have to hope for the best.
Serendipity, yes.
Yes. Okay. So beside a Bulgarian classic, a modern Slovenian novel that talks about the beginning of the war in ex-Yugoslavia, we also have a collection of contemporary Croatian poetry by Marija Dejanović, who is also here with us, and that collection was translated by Vesna Marić, who, interestingly enough, translated 2 years before, or 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, translated A Cat at the End of the World to English, which Elvira is translating right now into Italian. And Elvira is here with us because of another Perishic's book. It's a collection of stories, Horror and Huge Expenses, which was translated to English by Will Firth. I have to mention also Will, who contributed a lot to translation of ex-Yugoslav literature. So that's why, and Elvira also translated that book to Italian. So that's the immediate reason why Elvira is also joining us today. And then we come to Nada Gašić, whose great book dedicated to Zagreb, a second book from her, Zagreb. Excuse me, I don't know. Please, Ellen, help me. What's the tetralogy? Tetralogia.
Yeah, it's for, yeah.
Okay. Tetralogy. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I a bit lost track there. So Ellen translated Water Spiderweb, Nada Gašić's novel, set in contemporary Zagreb in 2010s, but with the motive of a great flood of Zagreb in 1964, which marked the history of Zagreb and its development and many things that happened here in the city's undercurrents, sort of speaking. And that book was translated to Slovenian by Mateja Komel-Snoj, who excused herself. Also, she was not able to attend our event. But the book came out in Croatian some 14, 15 years ago, and it won the biggest award, the state award for literature in Croatia. And it's a piece of literature that kind of marks a certain era, and I would say the definite book of Zagreb locals and everything that could be described in a transitional Zagreb as such. I don't know, Ellen, if you would agree with me on this, on all the little details and the characters in the book.
Well, it's a very rich tapestry of all different aspects of Zagreb life, with a focus on Trešnjevka, the neighborhood that was hit by the flood. And it's it's kind of a lot of things. It's a police procedural, plus it's also kind of a little dystopian, and then there's historical and geographical things in there. It's a lot of different things.
We just finished Vesna, who translated Maria's poems and who translated Robert's Cat at the End of the World. She narrated the audiobook of Water Spiderweb. And we just released it on the platform Book and Zvuk. That's a Croatian audiobook producer and publisher. And I'm really happy how she did it. Nada is also happy. I will send you, I just received yesterday some codes for listening. So I will send you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Let me know what you think of.
I'm curious.
Business reading. I sent Johnny in Akashic books because we published one children's book by Laura Lippman. I sent Johnny and Johanna in Akashic books. I sent the invitation, a question for Laura Lippman. Could she maybe blurb the audiobook? Because I know she's doing audiobooks herself. And doing a similar genre of noir and crime fiction, and also putting some distant hopes, maybe something like that could happen, that we have a blurb by a famous US author for Nada's book.
Well, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I went through all the books. Yes, one more book, the last one in the project, is My Home Somewhere Else by Federica Marzi, translated from originally Italian by Lorena Kmet into Croatian, and by Jim Hicks into English. And this book is also a specific, I would say, Balkan book because it speaks about Istria and two generations of refugees in Istria. First generation is a woman who went away from Western Istria after the Second World War as an Italian refugee to Trieste. And the other character is a Bosnian refugee who escaped Bosnian War and came to Trieste during the Balkan Wars. And this book really kind of merges two perspectives, the perspective of the ex-Yugoslavs and all of us who went through the war and from, let's say, first-person experience, and the Italian experience of the Second World War, but then also of the Balkan Wars, looking at the Balkan Wars as something happening on the other side. So this book is an interesting merge of these experiences, and I'm not sure if I have read a similar book which is trying to do such a thing. Let's say join these two generational experiences from the war traumas. Let's use the opportunity that we are here and talk about specific challenges and specific maybe language or stylistic problems or aspects of these books, and how could we compare these experiences. So we don't have, okay, Anita joined us. Now I see Anita, hi. Great to have you here. Maybe to start from in Elvis's room, because Rawley sent me an interesting observation before this panel, an interesting observation of the let's say challenges or problems or issues that he came across while translating in Elvis's room, and that is so-called speech tags. So Rawley, you said my observation when I took the English translation and the Slovenian original and the Croatian translation, my observation was okay, the present tense that Sebastian uses as a narrator has been treated differently in different translations, because it just sounds different, and these tenses translate differently into each language. But that's something that is, as I understood from your email, that's something that is in translation solved more or less routinely. But
not necessarily, but yeah.
Okay, but I would like to hear what Anita and you like. How do you see this problem of tense, or not problem, just effect of the present tense being used in this book? But please explain to us this specific Slovenian usage of the speech tags.
Okay. Well, first about present tense. It's very striking, I think, in Sebastian's book. He begins, chapters very often with something like, I am lying in the bed. Or the first lines are in English, in my translation, I slowly open my eyes. I am lying on my back. There is a pleasant smell in my nostrils. And this goes through, and very soon you realize that this is from the viewpoint of a 5 or 6 year old child who's in bed with his parents on his birthday. And the novel continues in this way as this child grows up and becomes a young adult and has many, many different experiences, very common experience for someone in Slovenia in this period. It begins in the years around a couple of years before Tito's death, so like 1978, and goes all the way up to the wars in the Balkans in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
So it's a young man's experience of the army, of fighting even for Slovenian independence, and then his experience of the Balkan wars. And in each, as the man grows, as the boy grows into a man, the present tense continues all through the novel as he's narrating these events. And sometimes it will shift into the perspective of the person now, who is the narrator now, who will say something like, then I did not yet know that this would happen. So it seemed important to me to preserve the present tense. And when I say it wasn't so unusual, it wasn't a difficult decision for me to make, to preserve the present tense. And at times it presented difficulties because of English tenses. And so, if I had known this, then this kind of construction comes up. But that wasn't a major decision that I had to struggle with. Yes, please.
That was absolutely the same for me. I mean, even more so because Slovenian and Croatian are so similar in their grammatical setup and in the way we use our tenses. We have much more past tenses than Slovenian has, but for the use of present or past, it's basically all the same. And since I'm teaching that at the university to students, I just didn't think a second of how to proceed. That was easy.
Yeah.
So for me, the bigger challenge, one of the bigger challenges, was how to deal with situations where the narrator is describing what people say to him or to each other. And in English, we would normally say something, we would use what we would call a speech tag, like, my mother says, will you come into the kitchen now? In Slovenian, and this isn't just typical of Sebastian's prose, but it's very common in Slovenian prose that this my mother says or my mother said or Robert said this, said such and such a thing will just be absent, and it will be Elvis. For example, Elvis shifts in his seat. I am not sure I agree with you, and so there will be an action, or often it will be in Sebastian's writing, the character nods or shakes their head or points to something. So when you have a dialogue that goes on with these things, there's a lot of nodding and shaking of heads and looking at someone or looking away, but not he said or he says or she asks or he exclaims. These things are not entirely absent. I mean, Sebastian does use the verbs for that occasion sometimes, and often enough, but just as often he would leave them out. So combined with this is the fact that in this novel, Sebastian, and he doesn't in other novels as well, he doesn't use any kind of indicator of quotes. He doesn't use quotation marks at all. So when I first presented the manuscript to the editor, he just found this Buzz Poole, whom some of you know. He found this surprising and a little confusing at times and awkward. And indeed, when you have a conversation where everyone is just nodding their head or shaking their head, it can feel very unnatural. So working with Buzz, we worked out a way to... the other thing is that it's not the same, for example, to say, like in one instance, this character Elvis is being told to pay up money to a bully, and Elvis says, I don't have any money. And the way it says in Slovene is, I don't have any money, Elvis shakes his head. But it's said as a speech thing. So the idea is he's shaking his head as he says this. Whereas in English, if you were to translate that directly, I don't have any money. Elvis shakes his head. This is as if he's shaking his head after he says, I don't have any money. And so it becomes, it becomes difficult. In this particular case, we just left out the head shaking, sort of after Buzz went through it. And so now, because he's a child, Elvis, this character Elvis is like a 7 or 8 year old child and talking to a schoolyard bully. And so he says, I don't have any money, Elvis whispers, which is fine, which is natural, but it's a speech tag. So we needed these speech tags in English. And it's not enough just to say, someone says, oh, I agree with you, she smiles. But this is very, very common in Slovenian writing. It's
That's
not
so
just in
interesting.
critical.
Because of course, I didn't have this problem because, again, we can say that, but it doesn't seem to me that this is just Slovenian writing, because when I read Croatian novels,
I think it might probably
very
is general
common, and I
in
would
Croatian
say that
too.
this is some probably modern way of writing. I'm just thinking about Stjenica now, which is even more worse, and Ellen would definitely have something to say about it. What I'm thinking, there is no doubt that he did that intentionally, all of it. With present tense, with all this, without quotation marks, and how much we had to change and still to
I had the same
preserve
question,
what
Anita.
he intended.
I had the same question. So my initial draft, or the draft that I first presented to the editor, pretty much followed that. And so it would be something like, I don't have any money, comma, Elvis shakes his head, rather than a period, Elvis shakes his head. Following fairly closely what the Slovenian is doing, because it seemed like this is a way to respect the style of the author.
Right.
But on second thought, the fact that this is not just Sebastian's style, this is common practice in Slovenian writing. And I don't think it's marked as a particularly modern or avant-garde approach to writing. I think it's just embedded in the stylistic tradition of Slovenian.
No, it's not, because if you take older texts.
Well, now, I mean, now.
Yeah,
it's common. It's not something that, but yeah, okay, if you go back 20 or 30 years, it's different.
That's exactly the question. If this is not something that's usual, let's say, in English writing style, and it's kind of innovation that is common now in, let's say, Croatian, Serbian, Bosnian, Slovenian, because it is. We all know it is. Is that something that we would like probably to?
It's an excellent question. That is an important, excellent question.
Because what we are doing, I understand, for English speaking, you have always to make it closer to what the readers would read there, because otherwise, if it's distant in terms of being Slovenian, Croatian, Bosnian, and then distant in how it is translated, then it stands no chance, I guess. So this is interesting.
I would say Sebastian's book is because what caught my attention immediately when I read it first time is the present tense. That's why that was my initial question, because it is written as almost like a screenplay. So the characters move in real time, and you see this little detail here and this little detail there. But I understand Rawley, because in English it becomes kind of static. you don't have this feeling anymore that everything is moving smoothly, but somehow it becomes static because English doesn't have all these verbs that imply a certain action while speaking.
Right.
Or maybe
I mean,
maybe
we have some.
We
have some. I mean, I don't think it would be, and I would try to keep them in. And in fact, what I was in my first process before I gave the translation to Buzz, I thought, well, if the action has to do with something relating to the head or to the face, like he smiles or laughs or nods his head, then I'll keep it. But if it's something else, like he, I think you're wonderful, he moves closer, then it becomes harder to sell in a way to the English reader, I think.
I have this.
But the other thing, if I could just go back to what is, I think, very interesting about Sebastian's style and about the lack of quotation marks, which also Buzz had questions about when he first looked at it, is that you have these voices going back and forth, and often, I mean, I said he nods and everything, but often there's nothing, and so it's just one speaker and then the other speaker, all in the same paragraph, one after the other, going back and forth, and the reader has to pay attention in order to know who is saying what, because there's no quote. You don't know even that the quote that the speech has ended when the other person begins. Mm-hmm. So initially, Buzz wanted to have some kind of indication of where you had a different speaker coming in.
Yeah.
And I said, and I stood up for Sebastian's style here, and I said, no, this is really his style, because especially if you think in the early chapters where you're talking about a boy who's 6, 7, 8 to 10 years old, listening to adults speak, sometimes not even in the room, but listening to them through the door. This is the experience. You just hear these voices going back and forth. And so by not having any sort of, and just one voice run into the other, they're conveying more of this immediacy of the experience of the narrator as a boy. So I liked that, and I kept that very much.
I'm sorry if you see this warning that the network is not functioning good. I think we all can hear each other fine. Thank you, Rawley. I think this was a great insight into an example of really in-depth approach to translation from one language to another, and definitely each language, each combination requires its own approach. I mean, like Croatian to Slovenian to Croatian, very different from Slovenian to Italian or Slovenian to English. So I would like to hear Ellen and Jim and Angela about, do you see from what we were talking about now with Rawley, did you have similar doubts or questions, or how did your work with the editor, who is Buzz in all these cases, how did it look like, or what could you point out as let's say a certain challenge that you had to solve or take time or consult the author, what the author thinks, what would be the best solution? Can you tell us, of course, not in Vera Mujčić's case?
Well, I could just give an example. I think I have the impression, listening to what you just said, Rawley, that Buzz is learning fast about some of the issues that come up in working from Slavic languages into English. But what came up with Water Spiderweb was something a little different. So it's a novel that there's all these threads running through it, particularly symbolic issues like an accordion comes up in all sorts of contexts throughout the novel. And it had, in the Croatian, has a prologue and an epilogue. And Buzz was getting irritated by the repetitions of themes and images that kept coming up and phrases even that were repeating, and the epilogue repeats things from the prologue, and he kept saying, well, we've already had this, and why do we have to say it again? So then I said, why don't we consult with the author and see if it's okay for us to change this prologue and epilogue to overture and coda. And then it was possible for him to understand the novel as a work of music, which I think it definitely is. And Nada was delighted, the author, because she had perceived it threading through all these themes and stuff, a very musical sort of thing. And so he agreed to that, and then he had no more problem with the repetition because it worked as a piece of music. And it also emphasized, by putting overture and coda right into the English translation, it puts it right in front of the reader as a way of reading the novel, which is helpful, I think, because of all these themes that keep coming up. So that was kind of an interesting dramatic change. There's lots of different voices in this novel. There's a wonderful passages she has of a character sitting on a tram listening to people talking into their cell phones, and they're all different and they're all saying different things, and it's very funny, and you're only hearing, of course, half the conversation because they're talking to somebody away. But so that was entertaining to do, and I enjoyed it. But I think this question of the tags came up in this, and it's probably, Rawley, because Buzz had the experience with you, and he was looking out for that kind of thing in this as well. And we talked about it occasionally. There were these issues, and we didn't use quotation marks; we used dashes.
I want to say we really have, on this project, we have really the best translators from Croatian, Slovenian, into other languages. And I'm really proud and I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to work with all of you on this project. And also, interesting thing that Ellen just mentioned, Buzz worked as editor on all these English translations. And I think it's very important that we have an editor who is so much engaged in one publishing house into translating from these parts and publishing. And what Ellen said, he is learning fast. Buzz really wants to get to the bottom of Yugoslav literature, if that is possible, and I think he's doing good. I think he's doing good, and I'm really happy how this project. I mean, Sound of Passage, which published most of the books in Project Mirror, and this project we are talking about. I'm really happy how it's going and how he's really wrestling with the texts and with all the problems and challenges that are occurring. But the critics are satisfied and the readers are satisfied. So I think he's doing a good job.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. Yeah. It was really a pleasure to work with him.
Definitely.
Thank you. Jean and Angela, could you comment on the challenges of translating the works that you've been translating into English?
You want to start, Angela?
Sure. It's been very interesting to hear very familiar challenges. Yes, the tags, and Bulgarian does a similar thing. But the thing with tenses, Bulgarian also does a lot of what I like to call flip-flopping tenses, which in English is often considered, sort of sloppy style, but in Bulgarian is actually a sign of mastery and like playing with time. And so it's always, for me, like a difficult balance of, I don't want to iron it out completely, but I also don't want it to be completely disorienting for the English reader. So in the case of Gem, actually it helped that it was first person narration, because I think in English, the one place where we do kind of flip-flop tenses is like, oh, I was at this bar and this girl comes up and she does, it's clearly in the past, but you're telling it in the present. So it worked a little bit better here than it has in other works that I've translated. But the big bane of Buzz's existence was the exclamation points. Bulgarians love their exclamation points, and I had actually reduced them considerably from the original to what he saw, and he still like got rid of them. And then he was like giving me a quota. He's like, okay, you've got 20 exclamation points. Use them. Like, and he was kidding, but it was really, that was one of the things that we, in humorous, and I think the way dashes are used are quite different, and the semicolon is not as popular, I would say, in Bulgarian as it is in, I think, at least American academic writing, but I think also in literature. And so we had a lot of discussions about, because, the author is no longer with us, and, to what extent we both of us felt comfortable making some adjustments in terms of readability and with the punctuation, but also not wanting to, iron out or steamroll her style. So yeah, we certainly had conversations that what you guys have been mentioning has sounded very familiar.
No, I was going to jump in too in terms of Buzz's input. The thing that the conversation has made me think of is how on several occasions, but one in particular, when Buzz reacted like this just, I mean, this should be rewritten. This novel should have had a better editor at the beginning or something like that. And I'm thinking, what I figured out from that reaction was that the translation wasn't working yet. I mean, that because I was translating from Italian, so it's different than the Slavic language we've been talking about, but it was cultural translation that wasn't necessarily getting through. And as Ivan said, that my novel is a story of two generations or different generations of refugees, but because it's told really through their experience, almost with a kind of free and direct style, getting that experience across is the key to making the translation work. And there was one passage in particular where the Bosnian immigrant, was talking about being stigmatized by the mispronunciations of her name in school. And Buzz just thought, this was twice as long as it needed to be. It should have had more showing, less telling, and all this kind of stuff. And I just thought, no, I have to actually translate it completely differently. I just felt like I moved away from the sentence and towards the context and meaning of the situation. And I think, again, the input was super important, and it was one of the things that Ellen and I had the same great reviewer, Corey Oldweiler, and it was one of the passages that he mentioned in his review as an example of something that the novel really does well.
Yeah, in a really great newspaper.
Yeah. The main obstacle and the most obvious one, it'll be visible on the page for anybody who looks at the English translation, is that these two different protagonists, both women, both immigrants, when they were adolescents, took almost diametrically opposed modes of assimilating or not assimilating. The older protagonist, Norina, after being in the country for 6 generations or 6 decades, still speaks only Triestino, or the mix of Pugliese Triestino that she came to Trieste with. And the younger Bosnian, the first time we meet her, Norina is interviewing her for a job, helping out around the house. And she says, this young girl speaks Italian perfectly without an accent. Oh, even better, with a slight Triestino accent. So it's one is, super assimilated, and the other says, no, I'm not going to do that. So the obstacle then was what to do with Norina's Triestino, because Federica Marzi is a wonderful writer and manages to use dialect in the Italian novel in a way that every Italian reader would see it as dialect, but it's not marked in any way. It's comprehensible because of cognates or context. But then I had to figure out what to do with it in English. And I talked with a lot of people. I probably talked with Ellen. I know I talked with Russell Valentino. Lots of people said, what do you guys do with this? They said, well, there's nothing perfect you can do. But what I ended up doing was italicizing. I also tried to shape the language so it sounded more like the dialect sounds. I used lots more of contractions. I made it rougher, more folksy in lexicon too, but mainly I just use this prosthetic device of leaving all these all the dialect that Norina spoke in italics, so an English reader had to see something was different. I don't know if it's a perfect solution, but at least it made it impossible to miss. And for me, that was essential. If Norina's not assimilating, why should her language look like everyone else's English?
Yeah, I would say in Slavic, Croatian, Slovenian, Serbian, Bosnian prose, contemporary prose, the realistic prose, let's say the one that was in style for the last 20-30 years, there was a lot of usage of dialect, slang, and all kinds of diversions, and it became something that I think translators often wrestle with. I don't know if you can comment on that, but how to even when you have a mix of different language categories in one dialogue, two people speak different dialects. Like how will you translate that?
In Marzi's novel, in the first 3 or 4 pages, there are 3 or 4 languages, and that was what sold me on it. That's also the question of what to do with the dialect. You want a challenge, right? You want something to read.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this project was also demanding from that angle. These were not simple texts. These were not easy translations, definitely. And these 11 books really represent their kind of catalogs of translating different styles and different mixtures, I would say. I want to ask, thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. I want to ask Maria, who is here with us as an author, and Vesna is not here to ask Vesna a question about translation of poetry, but Maria herself translates poetry. So Maria, I would like to ask you of your experience of being translated to English, and of course you could read the translation, you could work with Vesna on the translation of your own poems. So what can you tell us, like how did you see this process, and did you look at it as a translator, or did you look at it mostly as an author because these were your poems?
It was a wonderful, wonderful process to collaborate with Vesna as a translator. And I was, of course, in the role of author. So I let her guide the process, and I let her have the creative freedom over the translation, because I feel like a translator is a person who also co-creates the book in another language. The translator gives their voice, their tools, their apparatus, so that the book can reach a reader that they know how will react, and I don't know how the reader will react. So I trusted her. I also try to be as active as I can. Whatever she asked me, I would specify in as much detail as I thought I could provide. It was also wonderful collaboration with Buzz as an editor of the project and of my book. Buzz was, of course, guiding the process in a very, very efficient manner, a very open, collaborative manner, and it was truly a wonderful experience for me. And I'm very happy and grateful for this opportunity to be translated by Vesna and published by Sandorf Passage.
Great. Thank you, Maria. I'm really happy. Your book was the first book in Mirror Project. So you kind of opened this whole translation lineage. Elvira, we talked about Italian language, we talked about Croatian, Serbian, Bosnian. Do you consider yourself equally skillful in both languages? How do you approach, because your mother tongue is Bosnian, but you write in Italian? How do you approach the translation, or how did you approach the translation of Robert's stories? And what was the biggest what was the biggest challenge for you working on those stories?
Yeah, well, I'm not absolutely equal in the two languages. In fact, when I started translating 50 years ago, I told when they proposed to me, it was Slavenka Drakulić's novel Frida's Bed, and they proposed to me the translation. I said, oh no, I cannot translate from that language, because it was a language that I left as I left Bosnia when I was 14 years old. And so it was really a passive language. I never used it in Italy, and it became some kind of a mother tongue, but not really because of my competence, because of my probably of my feeling of something, of a relationship with a place and with a childhood. So, but I started. It was a great challenge. Return to that language, but return like a stranger. So it became something strange. In fact, I translate in Italian, and usually the professional translators translate to their mother tongue. For me, it is not, or maybe it is, because Italian is my mother tongue of my adult life, of my professional life, and so. But there is something that remains, of course, from our relationship with a native language, and this is something that is instinctive, something very, very deep in the relationship with that language. So I can feel this language, even if it is not the language that I use, that I speak every day. So I'm going back to the question about Robert Perisic. I remember the great challenge was the story that Robert has written in English, but written as spoken by a Croatian man. And it was all written, you could not understand, okay, what is this? So the words were written not as an English language, but
called Strangers in the Night.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky because I work with Elisa Copetti, with Bottega Errante, and Elisa Copetti is herself a translator from these languages. And so I said, Elisa, what I should translate here? And we start thinking about that, and then I said, okay, I will translate writing as an Italian read English. So because it's very different, because in Italy you don't have a lot of letters that we have, and a lot of sounds also the Italian people pronounce differently, and so it was really very also funny and very creative. But with Robert, probably the great challenge is, as the other also said, are the tenses. Usually from these languages, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, into Italian, the tenses are the great difficulty, because in Italy the use of the tenses is very strict. So you cannot move like that. You cannot start with the past and then go back in the present. Only all this in a page. In Italian, a reader should have something very, I don't know, comfortable, very plain. But you kill a writer if you level everything like so. This is the biggest work that I have to do when I translate Robert Perisic, but usually all the writers from this area.
And what would you say when you translate from Croatian, Bosnian, Serbian to Italian? Would you say, for example, this aspect of vocabulary and dialect? Is it something that let's say in the existing translations, is it something that is being reflected in Italian, or most translators or editors choose to somehow override it or go over it?
Yeah, they usually try to go over it because it is easier. Because it is easier to have a book very clean. In Italy, you have a lot of dialects because, but you cannot translate. It happens in our man in Iraq that I translated from Perisic, and there were a lot of Dalmatian words, and also some. A lot of words in Dalmatian. There were mother and other people who always spoke, but you cannot translate it as a South dialect from in Italy, because people cannot read a book written by a Croatian man and read that in Italian, in Naples dialect. So I also choose to find what was the aim of this using the dialect. So what Perisic wanted to do with that, to represent, I don't know, a difference between the city and the small towns, between Dalmatia and the capital of Croatia. And so you find some words, something that works just to represent that difference. But of course, you lose a lot of richness in that languages, because they are languages, not only dialects.
I've been reading these days Percival Everett's James. I've been late because I just took it after it won the award. Even though Buzz was telling me it's a great book and I should read it months earlier, but I remembered it brought me back to my childhood, and the first encounter I had with these issues, I got for present for birthday before I was 10, I think, a Huckleberry Finn. In translation of great Croatian translator Zlatko Crnković. And even I remember my grandmother or somebody said, this is a great book by a great translator. And I started reading it, and no, I understood, but I couldn't. No, I was petrified. I don't know how to say the white characters were speaking some kind of, let's say, Slavonian, and the African Americans were speaking Bosnian. And I, as a kid, that was still in Yugoslavia. I don't know what to say. I just thought this cannot be true. Just, yeah, this is really important, how to relate with the reader using dialect. Yeah. Well, this was a great conversation. I want to ask you, would you like to add anything? Do you think we should stress out certain things connected to this project while we are here or all together? I even somehow now through this conversation, it came to me that this project is almost like a small translation incubator,
Right.
where Buzz was one of the deliverers, but it's really it was really great. These 3 years following, I was mostly. So I was editor here. I was not an editor. I was only a publisher. None of these books I edited. I was only a publisher, and I had a chance to look at it from a side and see how things developed. And it was really enjoyable to see all of you really putting the best of efforts into bringing these books into life in your languages. So thank you very much, really.
I have a question. I have a question here. I have the book, and it says this book was published with financial support from the Ministry of Culture and the European Commission and so forth, but I didn't see anywhere reference to the Mirror project, and I was sorry that that's not on the copyright page.
You're right. Mirror project is the internal name of our European project. But now when you pose this question, it seems like it would be natural to describe the Mirror project inside of each book.
I think so.
Yeah. So we applied for Mirror number 2.
That was my question.
Yeah.
That was my question, because
yeah.
I know lots of publishers here at home, of course, and I know you for a long time, and I think that with your attitude and knowing people and bringing us all together, even in this event, you are the only one who can do that. So I'm really happy to hear that you applied for Mirror too. Okay?
Yes, we did.
When will you know?
And Črtice is one of those books.
Oh, this is already in.
Yes, no, we applied.
Okay.
We applied. We are waiting
Okay.
for the grant results, which should come out, I think, in the fall. Unfortunately, Bottega couldn't join us in the Mirror 2, but we are working with Bottega as well, and we will continue working. So Elvira is translating Robert's most famous novel, A Cat at the End of the World. So if we get the grant and we continue translating into English and the regional languages, we will, Ellen, we will put the note, and we will come up with the logo as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Now, the one thing I would say, Ivan, is that I think rather than think of obstacles, I think that everything we've been talking about is in fact what makes these books fantastic to read. And I think it's actually what people are looking for these days. I mean, translation as a field has become incredibly important in the U.S. And I think that, the thing I keep saying about Marzi's novel is it's not just you're reading a novel in translation, you're reading a novel about translation.
Yeah.
And I think that's true of all of these. And I think it's a reason people will buy them and read them. I was at I'm in Turin, and I was at the Salone del Libro today, and I stopped by Bottega Errante, and I looked for Marzi's novel, and I didn't see it anywhere. I thought, are they really? They're not like promoting it at all? And so I asked, and of course they said, no, it's sold out.
That's great. Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah, that's the best that can happen. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Thank you all for joining this conversation. This was really a great experience. We recorded the conversation, and with your permission, we will keep it online on the Sandorf and Croatian Literary Translators Association Facebook page. So other translators can listen to our little problems and actually advantages, as you said.
And please say hello to the people at the hookup from me.
Yes.
Hi.
Let them be seen.
Okay. We're moving.
Bye.
Yeah, like slow.
Hi, dear.
Hi. Rodel and friend for
Bye.
joining into the conversation.
Take care.
As you can imagine.
Nice to see you, Angela.
Good to see you, Ellen, as well. Hope to see you in person sometime soon. Take care.
Okay, let's be in touch again when the mirror will officially start, and maybe we make like another conversation at the half of the next project.
Excellent.
That would be great. That would be
Yes.
great.
Excellent. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.